I've been in a long distance flirtation and I want it to grow, but I've been getting mixed signals. How do I find clarity or move on? So, this is a great question. And really, it gets to the heart of what do you do when someone that you have been building a connection with suddenly goes quiet? You had weekly calls, there was an emotional connection, maybe even the spark of something romantic, and now perhaps there's silence, or there are sparse and polite replies at best. And maybe that leaves you feeling anxious, rejected, or even self-doubting, and really wondering if you should reach out and ask where you stand, or whether that would be too much and you should just walk away and let it go. So if you've ever been in that kind of gray zone, particularly in a long distance connection, and maybe even especially after a divorce or a long time away from dating, this particular segment is going to shine a light on the core issues so that you can find some peace, make a decision either way, and move forward from a place of deeper self-trust. Okay. So, first thing I want to say about this is that it comes from a member of the online community, and they did provide a little more context and detail. So I want to provide some of that so we understand the full picture of this case illustration. So I've been in contact with someone for a year. We met at a retreat. We have mutual friends. We've only seen each other 3 times due to the long distance. We used to have regular weekly calls, and while we never spoke directly about how we felt, it seemed like something was building. There were tentative plans for him to visit me, but then he went on a trip and never mentioned it again since he got back. He did not disappear, but the communication is notably sparse, and I thought he would bring it up again when ready. I am newly back in the dating world after a long marriage and difficult divorce, and finally felt ready for something deeper. Should I send a message to find clarity or take the hint and let it go? So let me know in the chat if this relates to you, or if you've ever had an experience like this, or maybe you know someone who's gone through something like that. I'd know if this resonates with you. And I just want to say thank you to our inquirer for their bravery and their vulnerability in asking that question and providing those details. So the parts that I think are the most important regarding this question are, number one, they never directly discuss their feelings. So while your feelings are always real and valid for you, and your behavioral observations may be correct, the connection in many ways is still built on interpretations and assumptions of what it means to him. Secondly, there was a meaningful shift in communication after a trip that he had taken, and that wasn't directly addressed. And third, the inquirer seems to be in a phase of life where they are ready for a deeper emotional investment, which we know they are capable of because of their relationship history, but they've had a difficult heartbreak. And so now there's some uncertainty that is kind of stalling their growth, right? And I think it's important to point these things out because these are the moments where we either wind up reinforcing old patterns or we can choose to communicate from a place of self-advocacy and self-awareness. So 3 important points I want to make about this. Number one, emotional safety comes from clarity and not from comfort. Number two, interpretations or assumptions are not the same thing as direct communication. And number three, you are allowed to outgrow a connection that maybe once felt safe and enticing, but it has changed over time. So first, clarity over comfort. When we've been out of the dating world, especially after something significant as a marriage and divorce, it is very natural to gravitate towards, let's call it a soft reentry, right? A connection that doesn't demand too much too soon can feel like a gentle reintroduction to the dating space. But once you start feeling yourself becoming emotionally involved, asking for clarity might feel a little too confronting. But it's really the only way to get that kind of emotional security. Not knowing where you stand keeps your nervous system kind of in this low grade spinning, right? This low grade humming. And now you're trying to interpret mixed signals, you're trying to read between the lines, and you start crafting stories to explain what is inexplicable. And that's not really going to foster intimacy. It's going to build upon your anxiety, and it's going to be dressed up as some kind of hope. But the anxiety, we have to acknowledge, may be serving a protective function here. This confusion is creating kind of like a smokescreen so that you don't risk asking a clarifying question, because what if that clarity threatens the connection? So to cut through that smokescreen, we're going to have to embrace the second point, which is that interpretations are not the same thing as direct communication. So we need to stop interpreting and start communicating more courageously and directly. So in this case, the inquirer said things like, I felt like something was building, or I thought he'd reach out when he was ready. And I say this with so much tenderness. because I was basically on my own for about 9 to 10 years after my divorce. Those are assumptions and interpretations, right? And assumptions and interpretations keep you stuck in limbo. Real connection isn't really built on decoding things. It's about being invited to and participating in a real ongoing dialogue. So, what if you gently reached out and said something like, I've really enjoyed our connection and felt that something was growing between us. Since returning from your trip, however, something has shifted in the energy. Is this still something you're interested in exploring? Because some clarity would really help me with my next steps, right? So you don't need to plead, you don't need to convince, and you want to communicate that you have emotional command of yourself, right? You just want to name what is real for you in your experience and just invite them to do the same in return. Now, they could respond in a way that is cagey, ambiguous, or seems like they're placating you because they're worried about hurting your feelings or something like that. In which case, they may have met somebody else, right? Because this is a long distance thing, or they just don't want to hurt your feelings. Either way, that response is still a lot of information, and it's information that you need and want, right? So they could also, that's one possibility. The other possibility is that they answer you directly. Maybe they say they were backing off because they didn't feel like they were getting clear signals from you either. And in my 20 years of clinical experience in relationship coaching, I can tell you I have seen both of those scenarios play out. One is waiting for the other to set the tone and to name something, while the other is waiting for them to set the tone and to name something. And because neither one of them is doing it, both wind up assuming neither one wants it. That happens too, right? And so that brings me to the last point for this question, which is that on a spirit level, maybe your readiness for more just outgrew the nature of that connection. So what once felt like a safe, slow burn possibility now starts to feel confusing and unfulfilling. And it's not necessarily because something went wrong, but because you just grew out of it. You became ready for something deeper. That gentle introduction awoken something within you. And now that thing that awoke has a little more bravery, has a little more confidence, has a deeper desire, a deeper, more defined want of something that includes emotional reciprocity. So maybe you're ready for someone to move towards you with a clear and confident kind of energy, not shies away from you with unspoken things and ambiguity. So instead of asking oneself, should I send a message? Try asking this question first, or instead, is this connection still aligned with the kind of love I'm ready for now and next? Right? Actually, for those of you that are here, just drop a yes in the chat if that reframe rings some bells for you. Is this connection still aligned with the kind of love I'm ready for now and next? Give me a yes if that question resonates with you. So altogether, bringing this to a close, if you've been living in the gray space, you're hoping for signs, you're interpreting mixed messages or their silence, and maybe you're holding your breath, waiting for them to set the tone or to give you some clarity, then this is your invitation to exhale. So maybe you send the message asking for clarity if it brings you peace, not because you're hoping for another hint or a breadcrumb. And even if they don't answer or reply to you, remember that no answer is an answer. You still gave yourself the gift of truth-telling, of honoring your growth, of not abandoning yourself in the name of not losing them, of standing in your sovereignty and honoring your feelings, right? Because what you're craving isn't just clarity, it's clarity on the way to connection with someone who meets you with the same depth that you are ready for. And that is not too much to ask, right? That's not too much to ask. Also, remember to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week and I wouldn't want you to miss out.